Brett Dawson from Sellout Crowd here with you at the BOK Center in Tulsa, where, be aware, they are testing the horn on the scoreboard. It works, as you're probably going to find out several times over the course of this video. The Thunder wrap up the preseason with a 118-116 loss to the Detroit Pistons. We keep saying this on these videos, and we're going to say it again. Not a lot to take from the result. The Thunder didn't have their starters, unlike the game against Milwaukee on Tuesday, when the starting five that you expect to play on opening night against Chicago was all intact and played together for some significant time. None of that tonight, no Shea. And so you take anything away from the game with a little bit of a grain of salt. But three things I think you can take away from this one. In a game where the Thunder didn't shoot the ball very well, where starters played some limited minutes, where, Jalen Williams got 20 points and Josh Giddey had 14 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, some interesting stuff, but those are kinds of the things that you expect from those guys. So three things I think you can kind of take away from this game and that are kind of larger takeaways from the preseason. First, Chet Holmgren kind of continues his basketball education. Once again, we saw him do some stuff he hadn't really done. He had a really sloppy start to the first quarter. Josh Giddey talked after the game about how Chet really hasn't tried to do too much. He's really stayed within himself, and that's made him easy to integrate into this team. We saw, I think, a little bit in that first quarter where maybe he was a little too energetic. Came back in the second quarter and really settled down. Had some great sequences. We saw a spin move into a layup. We saw a three-point shot followed by a two-handed block. And we saw one of those Chet Holmgren plays that I think is going to stick with us from the preseason. He gambles on a really spectacular entry pass from Cade Cunningham into the post. Can't get the ball, but recovers in time, and that two-handed block on a Jalen Duren-Duck attempt. One of the real highlights of the preseason, I think, for Chet. Just showed that quick recovery time and his shot-blocking instincts, things we've seen all the way through this preseason, but certainly on display there in that sequence. A second thing I think you can really take away is also Chet Holmgren related. We saw him start alongside Olivier Sarr tonight. Don't know how much playing time Sarr is going to get over the course of the year, a two-way center who the Thunder are comfortable putting in a game, but he's not going to play significant minutes. However, OKC's a little shorthanded up front, and so this was a chance for Mark Daigneault to play another big guy alongside Chet Holmgren and get a look at how that might feel when you have Jalen Williams, Jay Will at your disposal, or when Aleksej Pokusevski is back. What that does in some cases, Mark Daigneault talked about this after the game, it's going to let Chet roam a little, let the other big guy be the primary pick and roll defender, and let Chet kind of roam, maybe take away a side of the floor. You'll see a lot of NBA teams do this. Mark Daigneault talked about Draymond Green doing it. Kevin Durant has done it over the course of time. Anthony Davis does this quite a bit with the Lakers. So that'll be something we might see a little bit more of once the Thunder roster is whole. No updates on the status of those guys, although Daigneault said this week that Pokusevski is coming along nicely and maybe a little bit ahead of where they projected him to be. The final takeaway I would say from tonight, Cason Wallace came back, and though he didn't start tonight, did play some minutes, and though he was in late in a fourth quarter of a really competitive game, but without starters on the floor and without an NBA, without NBA regular season stakes, you saw some really good stuff from him. Just the competitiveness, the will. He had a great play where he got a steal off of after a Thunder score that was really just pure hustle. He ripped the ball away when Detroit was trying to start a break. He's just a really aggressive defender. I thought this tonight that while this is preseason and you have to apply all those preseason caveats and qualifiers, he had he's a Thunder guy minutes tonight, I thought. He looked like a guy who belongs. He looked like one of those guys who's just a basketball junkie who follows the scouting report, kind of is starting to learn tendencies, but also just kind of brings that effort, that intensity. And it's more than just effort. I think he knows where to be on the floor, not just defensively, where he made his reputation in high school and college, but also offensively. Mark Daigneault's talked a lot about this, his real sense of spacing, his understanding of where to be on the floor and how to play off the ball. Not always a skill that guys who came up as point guards have. He played a little bit off the ball at Kentucky, and I think that helped. But also, I just think he has a really good feel and a high IQ for basketball. We saw that again tonight. Mark Daigneault said it was nice to have him back. Preseason is wrapped. I think the biggest thing for the Thunder, kind of trying to get some of these new guys integrated, that happened pretty successfully, and with Chet Holmgren in particular, pretty seamlessly. But Josh Giddey talked about that, about Chet not trying to do too much, about how well he's fit in and how easy that's made the transition. We've seen some of that over the course of this preseason. We've seen that with some of these other young guys as well. I think we'll continue to see development from those young guys. We'll continue to see rotations develop and change, and all that stuff starts for real next week in Chicago on Wednesday. Mark Daignault said the Thunder will go hard for a couple of days this weekend, and coming out of the weekend, they'll ease back on those practices, gear up a little bit to get started. Wednesday night in Chicago, the real deal happens. We'll be there. We'll have this kind of report from you there. Appreciate you following along in the preseason. Let's get the real thing going. We'll see you soon.